Hey guys, my name is Sukesh. I'm a CCI security and I have 10 plus years of experience in the network security field. In this course or in this video, I'm going to talk about a course which is about the next generation firewalls. The next generation firewall means all the multi-vendor firewalls here. When you go for a security interview nowadays, employers ask for multi-vendor skills. Your profile has to be multi-vendor to survive today's or to meet today's requirements. That is because there is no clear winner in the network security field. Although Palo Alto and Checkpoint are leading ones, whereas Cisco and Juniper lags behind a little bit as compared to Palo Alto and Checkpoint, but they do exist. All four vendors they do exist in the network today. So you will get to work on all these four. So it is better to learn them all. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what all content I'm going to deliver about these firewalls, and I'm also going to talk about the prerequisites, as in who all can appear for this course. And I'm also going to give you a short and brief overview about some basic technologies in the network security, and we also going to implement the basic configurations on all these four firewalls. So let's begin, guys. Let me take you through the course content first. And before I take you through the course content, let me tell you something about the delivery method. In When we come for the entire course, first we're gonna do is we're gonna learn all the security technologies first, like what is netting, what are policies, what is IPsec VPN, what is SSL, what is certification authorities. First, what are certificates, how do SSL VPNs build, how do remote access VPNs build. So first we're going to talk about all these technologies. We're going to learn the theoretical part of it, which will help us troubleshoot further, and then we're going to implement all these technologies on the different vendor firewalls one by one, or maybe together. I will be designing the labs accordingly. So this is about the technologies. Let me take you through the topics. So most of the topics are going to be same. As I say, the technology is going to be same. It's just that the implementation is going to be different on all the four firewalls. So these are the topics for Cisco, and these are the topics for Juniper, Palo Alto. Palo Alto, as you can see, has some different topics. That is because, oops, let me clear that up. Yeah, Palo Alto has some different topics. That is because Palo Alto is slightly a different firewall. It behaves a little different. As you can see, some different topics. We're gonna have a look at these in the technology section when we come for the entire course. And moving further, we move to checkpoint. So checkpoint is again altogether a different architecture firewall. I'm gonna talk about the checkpoint architecture here. So before I talk about the overview, let me tell you who all can be benefited for by this course. Anybody who has done CCNA routing and switching, or he has 1 or 2 years of experience in the networking industry, is good enough to learn this course. No background, no security background required to learn this course. It sounds big that you're going to learn all these four firewalls. So is there any specific requirement that I need to learn? No, it's just that you need to have the basic understanding of how the network works, how the packet flows between two devices. That's it. So let's start with the overview, guys, of all the four firewalls. Before I start with the overview, let me give you a basic understanding of the security terms, or rather security technologies that are in the market today. So if first of all, if I talk about the type of firewalls that that all the firewalls are categorized into, one could be stateful firewall, stateless firewall. Now, what is stateful? What is stateless? And I hope all this is readable. See, in stateful, what happens is, see, for example, this is my client machine, which connects through the LAN to my firewall, and the firewall takes me to the outside world that could be internet or my own network, which is on the outside of the firewall. So let me mark it up. This is inside, this is outside. So in network security, we presume that outside is not secure. We have got attackers in there. So any communication coming from outside to inside is blocked by default. But yes, that does not mean my client or all my users they cannot talk to internet or they cannot go to the resources which are hosted on the outside of the network. So what stateful inspection does when the request for any of the resource sitting on internet or outside of the network, sorry, any request coming from the client goes through the firewall allows it as it is going it from inside to outside. Some firewalls require policy for that. We will talk about that later. Let's talk about the concept first. So the client sending in a request outside, say for example, a web server is there. This web server is going to reply back. So earlier we understood that any session which is coming from outside to inside is not going to be allowed. But here a request came from inside to this server and this server is going to reply back. So this reply packet is going to make it through the firewall towards the client. It will not be blocked, but it will be allowed. So this thing is the stateful inspection. So what the firewall did, firewall made a note of this request. This request is going out. While the reply came back, the firewall checked and it's stable that okay, we have a inspection going on, we have a stateful connection going on. So I'm going to reply this. I'm going to allow this reply packet towards the client. So this is stateful inspection. And stateless is the firewall is not going to remember this request. Stateless is this request will require explicit policy as well as the reply will also require a policy. There will be no difference between this session and the reply packet. They will be treated as same. So from outside to inside also you would require a policy. From inside to outside you would also require a policy. Whereas in stateful, you may or may not require the policy from inside to outside. If I talk about Cisco, you do not require a policy for the traffic going from inside to outside. It will be work, but all the other firewalls, they do require policies. By default, they block all the traffic. So we will get to the implementation details later on. So this is about stateful inspection, guys, and the types of firewalls, stateful and stateless. The firewalls could also be categorized into two other categories that could be interface-based firewalls or zone-based firewalls. Now, what are these? Let me clear this up. So let's talk about interface based. Cisco ASA. Guys, this is an interface based firewall. While I explain this, I'm also going to explain the default behavior of ASA here. The client connects to the firewall. This is ASA, and this is outside of my network. This is inside. So firewall is an Cisco ASA firewall is an interface-based firewall. Why interface-based firewall? Because when we configure firewall, we're gonna configure these interfaces with a security level. Single L. Hope you understand. Security level. Inside interface by default gets a security level of 100, whereas the outside interface gets to a security level of 0 by default. And the default behavior of ASA is anything going from a higher security level to lower security level is going to be statefully inspected, which means stateful inspection is going to happen. I'll repeat that. Any connection going from high security to low security is going to have a stateful inspection done by the firewall. Stateful inspection is connections going from higher to lower security level. Their replies will be allowed from lower to higher. But if a new connection comes from low to high, new connection coming from low security level to high security level, that will not be allowed by the firewall. So if a if a host on the outside network tries to connect on the inside of my network, he will not be allowed. It will be blocked. But if the inside guy talks to the outside, it will be allowed because the reply packet will be allowed by the inspection policy. So that's about Cisco ASA's default behavior, and it is interface-based firewall because we are configuring security levels on the interfaces and all the policies and the further configurations that we do in ASA, that is on the basis of interfaces. We can make any interface to have security level 100 or security level 0. It's up to us on the administrator. That is done while placing the firewall in the network during the initial configurations itself. All right, so let's talk about the next type, that is zone-based firewall. Same architecture or same diagram, a different firewall now. It is a Palo Alto and it's Juniper SRX. Guys, and these are zone-based firewall. This is outside of my network. This is inside again. Any connection going from inside to outside is not allowed. Any connection going from outside to inside by default is not allowed. So, but they do stateful inspection. Now, how do they do stateful inspection? Let me explain that. We have to make these interfaces part of a zone. There could be many clients. They all reside in inside zone. We create a zone on the firewall, make this interface, could be 1/1 or whatever. We make this zone, we make this interface part of this inside zone. This become our outside zone. Let me do that in red to make it look good. So if this is 1.2, this gets to be the part of outside zone. So anything coming from, and all the policies that we configure on the firewall, they are done on the basis of zone. So the flow is going to be from zone to zone. So the policies will be applied on the zone, whereas interfaces will be part of the zone. So the same concept for stateful inspection here also, but we would require a policy at least in one direction. Say for example, I have a policy which allows traffic from in to out. So this policy, what it will do is it will do stateful inspection from inside to outside, and the return traffic will be allowed. Yeah, good. Now let's talk about, and guys, there are situations when we need to allow both ways traffic also. That is from inside to outside and from outside to inside as well. So we get to see those complex scenarios in the entire course. Let's stick to the basics for now. Let's move ahead to, okay, we have seen interface based, we have seen zone based. We saw Cisco was interface based, whereas Palo Alto and SRX was zone based. The fourth firewall is checkpoint. So guys, checkpoint is, I would not say it is interface based, or I would not say it is zone based. It's a more of a interface based firewall only, because we do not create zones on it. But that does not mean we make policies on the basis of interface. We do not attach policies to the interfaces. We just make policies that traffic coming from this source going to this destination is allowed or it is not allowed. So the most different part of checkpoint is its architecture. Checkpoint has a three-tier architecture, guys. All the remaining three firewalls, they are standalone firewalls, which means all the policy, rule bases, all the database reside on the firewall itself, but not in the case of checkpoint. Checkpoint has a three-tier architecture: the client, the manager, and the gateway. Gateway is actually your firewall which enforces all the policies to the network. All the connections that will flow through, they will flow through the gateway. But the policies, the rule bases, all the configuration that will reside on the manager. And there will be a client which is smart dashboard. So we will look at these things when we configure the basics of checkpoint. What we do is we access the smart manager via the client. We access the manager via client, that is a smart dashboard. We make policies, we configure policy, and we install a policy to the gateway. But the policy stays with the manager. If you have to make any changes in the policy, you've got to make in the manager and then install the changes in the gateway. So it's like the front end is different and all the policies are secured in the manager, right? So this is the distributed way of deploying a firewall. This is the distributed architecture, that is the three-tier architecture. But we can also have this checkpoint firewall as a standalone device. It's not mandatory to have a three-tier architecture, but it is the best practice and the entire industry follows this. But if you have less number of connections, a small network, not too many gateways, Yeah, by that it reminds me, you can manage many gateways, multiple gateways with a single manager. So you don't have to have a separate manager for each and every gateway. So multiple gateways can be managed by a single manager in distributed architecture. Whereas in standalone, the manager and the gateway, they both reside on a single device, and you can access that device with the client machine with a smart dashboard. So we will look at this way of deploying the firewall, the checkpoint firewall. Okay. So, all right, guys, this was the basic theoretical part about all the types of firewalls and to which type our four firewalls fit into. Let me brief it up. Cisco is an interface-based firewalls because we give interface security levels to the interfaces, and we create a zone in Palo Alto and SRX. We attach all the policies to the zones, so hence they are zone-based firewalls. Checkpoint is altogether a different one. It can be categorized into an interface because we do not create zones in it. We just make policies, and it's a three-tier architecture, and this is how it is uh, configured in a distributed and a standalone environment. But distributed is the best way to do and the most followed way in the industry. So let's look at the configuration part, guys. Let's go to the implementation part. Let's implement the basics of these firewalls one by one.